about becoming stronger. And again, that doesn't mean you can beat everybody up. Maybe you're just small, and but you maximize what you can. Maybe you don't have the highest IQ, but you maximize what you can, so that you know what you stand for, and you're able to defend it. Intellectually, yes. Physically, if it comes to that, of course. Psychologically, emotionally. Every way that's a part of you as a human, that's how you defend it. Because to defend those things is to defend yourself on the grounds of humanity. To be able to put yourself up and say, I'm a full human. Not deficient in any area. Maximize as best as I possibly can. And in so doing, well, maybe you'll be a role model for those children, that family, the people around you, nieces, nephews. Hell, maybe if you're lucky enough, you'll be a role model for yourself.
What I got from the quote was,
Right.
read it.
Go back to the tome, find out.
Isn't it funny how we do this thing where we'll hide something from ourselves, as if that'll stop us from doing it? What is so tempting that you have to hide it to yourself?
Everything bad.
And the fact that you might think of yourself as good because you have no cause. And you don't get titles from the lack of an action. You get titles for an action. If you're heroic, English. If you're heroic, you do heroic things. If you're good, you do good things. Just because you choose, or no, just because you don't, doesn't mean you aren't. If somebody is pounding antidepressants every week and drowns their feelings in drugs, it doesn't make them not suicidal just because they haven't attempted. That just makes it so that they haven't. It's
Something really important here. Well, as always, there's a few things really important there. First off, that last part about somebody who's, how do you describe it? Pounding away at their feelings? Pounding?
drowning.
What's that?
Drowning.
Drowning their feelings. Sorry, drowning their feelings. So they're drowning their feelings, and that covers it up. But eventually you're going to have to emerge. And when you emerge, the world that you're going to reemerge into, of course, is different from the one that you left, in the sense that it's probably worse. Trees have a way of growing, not shriveling, especially when you water them, or even if you just leave them to their own devices. Whatever worry that you left behind is going to still be there. It will probably have grown, actually, because you've probably made it worse in that drunken state, either by putting it off until tomorrow, or by doing things that have made it worse in the meantime. So that doesn't mean a person's not suicidal. In fact, if anything, it kind of it makes it almost like it's more so, because it's a warning sign. It's a person who is acknowledging that there's something that's so terrible about their lived reality that they're going to have to cover it up somehow. They have to escape it. In other words, you're acknowledging, as I've talked about in the lie, I've talked about in the past, where you lie to create an alternate reality. We'll drown our depression, or drown our misery, knowing that we're creating an alternate reality. So we intentionally lie to ourselves. We do it on purpose, because the thing that we're escaping is so terrible to us that we're willing to live an actual lie in favor of that. And so when people say things like, I want the truth, most of us don't want the truth. Most people don't want the truth. And you can tell if a person wants the truth by how it is that they interact with people who tell the truth, or how they run away from it. If you're constantly getting wasted as a way of avoiding reality, you don't want the truth. And this doesn't necessarily mean that there's a deficiency in your character, which is, I think, why we rebel against it so much, why we hate that idea so much, because we think, well, if I'm running away from it, it must mean that I'm intentionally, trying to not engage in truth. No, it's because the thing that you're running away from is so powerful, and you haven't yet developed the ability to deal with it. This is why we get drunk. This is why we get high. And I'm not just talking about recreation. I'm talking about as a matter of life course. And we write this thing off so much as like, oh, but I'm just young, Bill. That's just what I do for fun. No, it's because you don't know yourself. That also goes along with being young. What goes along with being young is also all of the the anxieties and the heartaches, the lack of understanding about the world, all of the things that later on in life will cause people to run away from their feelings by drowning them, you have in massive quantities when we're younger. That's why we do those things when we're younger. It's not just for the fun. It's how many times is it fun for? Many times, of course, but then when it becomes a matter of lifestyle, then of course you have to recognize that time period in our life when we're younger, which is when we should be learning how to cope with things, when we should be learning how to overcome things. Instead, we're learning how to cover them up or drown them, to avoid them. So remember, anything you practice, you're going to get good at. Doesn't matter what it is. If you practice it, you're going to get good at it. If you practice dealing with those things when you're younger, you're going to be really good at it when you're older. If you practice if you practice running away from those things when you're younger, you're going to be really good at running away from them when you're older. Really good does not mean, therefore, a good life, of course. It means a tragic life. And it's not just tragic for yourself. That's the easy part. Any of us can handle tragedy for ourselves. It's the tragedy that you're going to create for everybody else around you, for your family, for your friends, for your children, if you have them, God willing, for your spouse, for your spouses, if you never deal with it. And I'm not telling us anything that we don't already know. A lot of us already are aware of this. We deal with people like this already. Some of us have parents who are like this. And that's the really tragic thing, is if we can sit there and look at our parents who are drowning themselves and try to figure out, what is it that you're running away from? It sucks. It hurts. Of course. It hurts. If that person is able to stop and think, it hurts them too, which is why they start to drown it. And it just becomes Tuesday for them. Yeah. And that's an important point. When you're numb, you're numb. When you're numb, you're numb. You don't get to numb just part of yourself. So when you're numbing yourself to the pain that you're trying to drown out, you're also numbing yourself to the effect you're having on other people. It's intentional. You're intentionally choosing to do that. And when you sober up, that's typically when people will talk to you about it. And tell you, when you were drunk, when you were however, you did this and that, here's how it made me feel. Oh my God, you're doing it again. And that's because it doesn't seem so bad when you're drowned out. Because you're dumb. You can't experience it. You're not sensitive enough to it. I know people will say, oh, but some people get more sensitive. Not in the right way. Not in the right way. Not in the way that you actually process the effect, the impact that you're having on people. And again, this is something that shouldn't be a surprise to any of us. We all know people who go too far and have wrecked their families and friends. And there's something incredibly narcissistic about the idea that I'm going to be the one person who's going to be different. It's like people who do heroin. You know how incredibly hard it is to stop doing heroin? I wonder how many people's lives have really been made better in the long term, in the long run, by doing heroin. And yet, we'll always think like, I'll be that one person who can overcome it. I'll be that one person who can stop it. What about the long list of people who have died from it and destroyed their lives from it, destroyed their bodies from it? Whatever. I'm different. Tell me if you've heard this before. You don't know what you don't know. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind, because as you're going through life, there's so much that we don't know. And there might be a good reason that we don't do things. Like, for example, people who start using drugs and they start using alcohol. I mean like alcohol excessively, not just recreationally, even drugs that way. But typically we do that when we're younger. You don't usually see a lot of 40-year-olds who start doing acid for the first time. Why? Because when you're older, you know a bit more. When we're younger, we don't know what we don't know, but we think we know. And it's such a weird thing, like we're so conscious about so many things in the world, like what we eat, but we'll put anything in our bodies without knowing what it does. I'm not saying this isn't a judgment about whether you should or shouldn't. It's just, and if you're taking it that way, then there might be something inside of you that's receiving it that way. How much you know when you're actually doing it, I don't know. And I told you I've never been drunk before, so what do I know? But as Nietzsche is saying here, I've laughed at the weaklings who thought themselves good because they had no claws. Yeah. It's like we see people who will revel in the fact that like an 85-pound beta cuck who's just like, violence is never the answer. Of course you think that. What would happen if you actually engaged in violence?
You're fucked.
Yeah. You're fucked. You would die if you actually engaged in violence. We don't. I mean, we look at the lion and the rabbit. Do we look at the rabbit and say, oh my gosh, you are so virtuous for not attacking the lion? What happens if the rabbit attacks the lion? It dies. And now this is not just Nietzsche, grabbing a kid's lunch money from him and bullying him. He's making a really important point here. If there are things in your life that you have that you love, if there are things in your life that you have worked hard to develop, if you have opinions and thoughts and ideas, all of these things need to be defended once in a while. Think about, like, for example, if you have a family. Is your family worth defending?
Yes.
Then you have an obligation to learn how to do it. Are your ideas worth defending? Then you have an obligation to learn how to do it. Does that mean physically? Sometimes. Does that mean psychologically? Does that mean intellectually? Yeah, all of these things. Does that mean, by the way, does that mean in terms of courage? Yes, of course, having the courage to do it. How many times do we know something is wrong? How many times do we know that something terrible is happening and yet we don't defend it? We don't fight for it because we're afraid. Well, the more prepared you are, the less afraid you have to be. If you have strong ideas and you're able to defend your ideas, you don't have to worry about people destroying your ideas because you're ready for it, you're prepared for it. If you walk into a room, that doesn't mean that you have to be the baddest ass in the room. It doesn't mean you walk in and you go, I can beat up anybody. It's not what it is. There's always a bigger fish. No matter how tough you are, every UFC person has lost except for Khabib. But other than that, and that's within a weight class, by the way. But there's always somebody who can take you out. There's always somebody who can beat you up. So it isn't about being the toughest. It's about being able to defend yourself. And it's about being able to defend the people around you. You're not going to win everything, but you need to be able to give yourself the best possible opportunity. I mean, isn't that the kind of person you want to be for your children anyway? Someone who they can look at and say, think about how many of us grew up thinking that our daddies were the strongest people in the world, or our uncle or our mommy were the strongest people in the world. And then we grow older, and then all of a sudden we're stronger than them. And then we realize, oh shoot, they were not the strongest person in the world. Wouldn't it be great if you actually were someone who they could legitimately look up to, and be someone who you could legitimately be a role model for in that? And that doesn't mean you have to beat everybody up. It doesn't mean you have to make everybody feel stupid with your arguments. It just means that you're somebody who's strong, confident, able to defend yourself, and able to defend others and protect others. Because it isn't just about you. It's about other people as well. But weaklings walk around and they think, I'm so strong because I don't fight. Or I'm so strong because I don't engage in that stuff. Maybe. If you're strong and you choose not to, it's a choice. If you're weak and you choose not to, it's because you're a coward. It's because you are a weakling. You're a person who has no claws. And this is something that we're going to find that Nietzsche distinguishes between these two types of morality. You have a herd morality, and then you have the individual morality. The herd morality is one that people come together and they defend each other because they're weak. And then they start to recast vices as virtues. So in other words, you're not able to defend yourself. Yeah. Well, that's because you're just an intellectual, and you've moved past that barbaric phase of humanity. So no, you're good, you're with us. So now there's 100 of us who can stand together because we're afraid of that one lion. You get 100 rabbits together, they feel tough, by the way, because there's 100 of them. They think they can take the lion. Can they take the lion?
No.
No, it's an illusion. It's an illusion that they scream and shout because they're trying to convince the lion that they can take them. You see this online all the time. This is kind of the whole thing about cancel culture. Let's get enough of us together to yell and scream about somebody because we're so terrified of their existence because they remind us about how weak we are. We have to get rid of them. We have to silence them, to shut them down. We have to use, and then also people will say like, violence is never the answer. I'm a pacifist. War is never the answer. Anybody who believes that, tell me. Tell me. I'm going to take your wallet or your purse, wherever you keep your money. Yeah, I'll go get it in the prison wallet too. Yeah, you keep it there. That's where I'm going for it. What will you do? Yes, you'll call the police. You'll find somebody else to do your fighting for you. So it's not that you're against fighting. It's that you want somebody else to do it for you because you're a weakling. But no, it's because I respect the mechanisms of society. No, it's because you want somebody else to do your fighting for you. So it isn't about staying a weakling. It's not about staying those things. It's about becoming stronger. And again, that doesn't mean you can beat everybody up. Maybe you're just small, but you maximize what you can. Maybe you don't have the highest IQ, but you maximize what you can. so that you know what you stand for and you're able to defend it. Intellectually, yes. Physically, if it comes to that, of course. Psychologically, emotionally, in all of these ways. Every way that's a part of you as a human, that's how you defend it. Because to defend those things is to defend yourself on the grounds of humanity. To be able to put yourself up and say, I'm a full human. Not deficient in any area. Maximize as best as I possibly can. And in so doing, well, maybe you'll be a role model for those children, for that family, the people around you, nieces, nephews. Hell, maybe if you're lucky enough, you'll be a role model for yourself. And you'll see yourself and say, wow, I want to live up to that. Live up to that ideal. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?